Let me just get started and ask you about something that I heard during the media day the other day. You were talking about this being a completely different season than most just because we do have that World Cup break. Where do you want to be with this team in the middle of the season as far as the standings development, and where do you want to be where do you want to finish at the end of the season?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of performance, I'm not sure it's that much different from where we would maybe want to be in the middle of a season. Last season, I felt like we were actually in a really good spot, middle of the year, second, third, getting through the first 2/3 of the season. I think where this year is different is the ability to potentially make a lot of changes, going into that secondary window in MLS where you still have 19 games remaining. And so in some ways, it's not even quite halfway through a season. But I think there's a number of things you want to see. You want to see the team being, together and united, obviously. You want to see a team that's competitive and feel good about, a lot of the pieces that you've helped construct and put together. But at the same time, I feel like we're also going to be in a position, as we hit the middle of the year in the summer in that secondary window where we've got funds and we have the ability to still make changes and improve the group as well, which is always important because you never know what's going to happen. There could be injuries and those things as well, to where you need to be able to make that change to try to hit that second half of the year and really that last stretch in MLS, as you're gearing up for the postseason, wanting to feel like everything's timing up the right way. In some ways, last season, we were really, really good for 20, 25 games of the season, and then maybe seemed to hit a little bit of wall towards the end of the year and right before the playoffs. And so I'd like to maybe flip that a little bit and feel like we're really hitting momentum at the right time of year.
With this current roster, do you think they're playoff? Is this a playoff team?
Yeah, without question. We have a playoff caliber team. Now I think we've still got to add some pieces. But as I said, I mean, you need a lot of things, to go in a positive direction. You've got to stay healthy. I mean, health is always the biggest thing, right? Knock on wood, the team stays healthy. Some of your most important players stay healthy. Right now, as we get into the season, we've got one or two important guys from the offseason that we're still trying to get, into that main group and that main rotation. So, yeah, I think we're going to have a competitive team. I think we've got a team that's built and compromised out of a lot of younger guys as well, guys that are 23, 24 years old, hungry as well. And so I think it's about trying to find, our stride at the right time. Obviously, you've got to have quality in this league as well, and those one or two players that can provide the difference in quality. But I do believe we'll have a competitive group.
I'm happy to hear that. And one of the things I want to ask you about is it's you guys' second home that most people don't get to see. It's the Performance Center. It was a big deal last year when it was announced. Lots to look up for this Performance Center. What's the update? Where are we at with that Performance Center?
Yeah, look, it was another huge investment by ownership. It's amazing to see how rapidly the league continues to grow in many different ways. Not just the number of teams, right? But you look at now some of the new facilities, new stadiums that are coming into play. And really, I think it was a vote of confidence on the long term, of the sport in this country. We've already begun to break ground. The first phase is going to involve the expansion and the addition of fields and additional grass fields out there. So they've started that over the last week or two. So hopefully we'll have that in place over the next, 4 or 5 months. And I think longer term, we'll start to look at a little bit of the operation of how we're going to build out things and expand the inside and just update some areas to make it, state of the art.
You mentioned something that really caught my attention is the MLS continues to expand, evolve. Global stars are coming to the league. It feels like every year. And most recently, a guy in Minnesota, not going to mention names, but a guy in Minnesota is coming into the league. Previous to that, it was a guy in Vancouver. Is this not part of your philosophy to bring big house names, or should fans be on the lookout for in the future for big house names? Or how do you feel about that, just bringing global stars to Portland?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually, Phil and I had done a fan forum earlier in the week, and there was a young kid who had actually asked this question as well. And I think it comes at a really good time because I think 4 or 5 years ago, those opportunities maybe weren't as abundant as people would think. And maybe you're only talking about 1 or 2 stars that come to MLS and come to the league every few years. Sometimes those stars were almost, making it known it was their last season that they were going to play soccer. And that seems to have changed over the last couple of seasons. And you see now some notable players that have had big careers in Europe or with their national team that are also popping up and showing up in different markets. So I think that it's been eye-opening for us in Portland. I think over the last year and a half, we've actually started to give those things a lot more consideration. James Rodriguez was a player we gave consideration to as well. we'll continue to do that in the future. I think it's always got to fit within your market. It's got to fit within your group and within your culture, most importantly. But I think, like I said, the more abundant those opportunities become, I think the more open-minded that we'll also be in this market to assess which players can make us better, both on and off the field.
Hear me out. If the name Cristiano Ronaldo, you ever sign that name, that logo is going tatted right here on my chest.
Okay.
That's a promise.
Okay. I will personally let you know when we receive a call from him or his people that he may be an opportunity for us here in Portland.
That would be insane. Okay, so you were talking about Timbers fans and the forum you had, and one of the things I want to ask you about is the Timbers. I came here 4 years ago, and then the first thing I noticed was the Timbers fans and how passionate, loyal, but also vocal they are. What is your take on these fans that just want to see not only immediate reaction to the team doing something and making immediate moves, but also, you know, taking your time to develop your plays and stuff like that? What do you tell the fans, to be a little bit more patient, perhaps?
No.
Oh,
no.
I like that.
Look, I say this all the time. How did I end up in Portland? I was fortunate enough to be a part of the first ever restricted free agency class in this league as a player towards the end of my career. I made a conscious decision at the time that for me it wasn't about money and it wasn't about, you know, living in a certain place. I wanted to be somewhere in MLS that I felt like was very different, but was also sort of at the forefront or the bridge from kind of an old MLS to a new MLS. And it was Portland that, you know, and the Portland fans that drew me to the club, because I thought it was a team that was relevant. It was a brand that was relevant. You have supporters and a fan base that have high expectations and care. I think we have to embrace those as a club and try to meet and exceed those. Certainly, we've been in the process of trying to do that, and we want to continue to get better and to improve. You know, and we look at last season, qualifying for the playoffs, falling short in a 3-game series against San Diego. We want to try to take steps forward, you know, to continue to find ourselves in a stronger and stronger position each and every year. And so fans are fans, but fans are great, and they're also what makes every single weekend exciting to show up at Providence Park. It's what personally excites me and a lot of others to show up tomorrow night, you know, for a home opening match and seeing that entire stadium ready to go and completely excited for a new season. For me, I wouldn't change anything about it. It's what makes our market the most genuine, authentic in the entire MLS.
We're coming on Phil Neville's last year on his contract. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is his last year on his current contract. Is there anything you would want to see from him this year to say, all right, this is our guy for the future, we want him in the future? Or have you thought about that so far?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not going to get into personal details of contractual situations. I would say it's a big year for Phil. It's a big year for me. It's a big year for all of us. Like I said, we want to see these gradual steps forward and that we're making progress in a lot of areas, but I've never wavered on Phil being the right guy for the job for a lot of different reasons. And that's not just what you see on the weekend and the passion he obviously shows within his coaching skill set and those things, but it's a lot of the things you see behind the scenes as well. The collaboration, the willingness to work together, the willingness to support, you know, younger players, the understanding of club objectives, short and long term. Phil's been an absolute dream to work with in every sense. It's ultimately my job to try to support him and the rest of the coaching staff as well with the roster that's in place. But we're united, and like I said, I'm looking forward to a good year from all of us, and hopefully we can continue to make that progress that we want to see.
Thank you, Ned. And last question. I do love Phil, by the way. He's a media dream. Like, I feel like everything he says is a soundbite for us. But I want to ask you about how do you go about, how do you handle the discomfort from players when they're talking about the contract situations, and I think you've done such a great job dealing with the discomfort from players and not name dropping anything, but how do you deal with players like that in situations like that, not only for the better of the team but for the better of the player as well?
Yeah, look, I think you're always going to have a roster, right, of 25 to 30 players potentially, and only 11 players start, and most games only 14 to 15 players play. So I always say most times you've got 15 to 20% of your roster that might not be super happy or content with their individual situation, right? And you've got all these different individual situations that add up to the bigger part and to the collective. And so for me, I think first and foremost, it's about honesty and transparency. I think players ultimately want that in return. They want to have a good understanding of, you know, how they fit within the plans, you know, and how you see them both short and long term. Now, you're always going to go through different situations, right? And sometimes players ultimately decide that they want to go and also do what's best for them as well. And so it's a constant management of what's right for the club, both short term and long term. I think all we can do, as a club and in my position as well, is to try to be upfront and honest with players. You try and treat players with respect. These are players that have sometimes moved across the world. Some have families, some are starting families. So there's always a lot there to be taken into consideration. I know what it felt like as well to personally be a player as well. So you've got to sometimes try to put yourself in their shoes a little bit. But I think for the most part, like I said, we've tried to manage those things as respectfully as we possibly can. It's important.
Anything else you want to mention I didn't ask you about?
No, I'm excited for tomorrow night. Like I said, I think you go through these preseasons and you go through all this off-season work. For me, it's about getting back out there, seeing the bright lights on, the fans excited, the atmosphere and the environment, and then it all becomes real. And that's why we do what we do. So I'm excited.